Hey there, Morgan here from Crafting a Lovely Life, and today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful rolled paper flower shadow box using your Cricut. This project is perfect for beginners, so if you have never made paper flowers with your Cricut before, then this is a great tutorial to start with. I can't wait to show you how to make this shadow box, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is open up a new project in Cricut Design Space. Then we are going to select the Projects tab and search for rolled paper flowers. I'm going to use this Mother's Day rolled flower shadow box project to get the flower template. It costs around $2 to use, or it is free if you have Cricut access. So I will go ahead and click customize so we can make a few changes before we start cutting. Once the project opens, we are going to turn off the heart layer since we will be using a different design on top of the shadow box. We also need to add more flower templates because I am making an 8x8 shadow box, which will require 16 roses. If you use a smaller shadow box, then you will need fewer roses. The project already has 9 rose templates, so I'm going to add one more of each color and then add another row of a different color. So I will right click on the first color and click duplicate. Then I will repeat that process for the other 2 colors. Now I have 12 rose templates, but I need 16. So I'm going to select all 4 of the bottom rose templates, then right click and select duplicate. This will give me the last 4 rose templates that I need. I'm also going to change the color of these last 4 rose templates so they are just slightly darker. I'm going for an ombre look for this project, so I'm going to be using 4 different shades of pink paper. Now that we have all 16 rose templates, we can go ahead and click Make It. You will see that each one of these will require their own mat. Even if you are using 12x12 paper, there isn't enough room to cut more than 1 rose template at a time. If you have a 12x24 inch mat, you could get 2 on each mat, but I just went ahead and cut them all individually on my 12x12 inch mat. This may feel a bit overwhelming, but it's super easy to load up the mat and roll flowers while each one is cutting, so you don't have to just sit there and wait for the machine to cut all 16 templates. Now we can click continue and select the material type. I'm using a 65-pound cardstock, so I will select light cardstock as my material type. Next, we can place the first color of paper on our light grip mat. I'm going to use a brayer tool to make sure the paper is really stuck down well. Then I will load the mat and start cutting. Once the machine is done cutting, we can unload the mat. Then flip the mat over and gently peel the mat away from the paper. Now you can load up the mat again and cut the next rose template. Then you can continue that process until all 16 rose templates are cut. While you are cutting the rest of the roses, you can go ahead and start rolling the already cut ones. I am using this paper quilling tool to roll the flowers, and I highly recommend you do as well. I will link all of the tools and materials I'm using today down below if you want to use the exact ones I have. To start rolling the flower, we will slide the quilling tool at the very end of the paper and then start rolling. You want to keep the paper tight as you roll it. You also want to try to keep the bottom as even as possible when you are rolling it. When you get to the end, you will want to fold back the last circle since this will be glued to the bottom of your rose. Now you will pull the quilling tool out of the rolled flower. You have a couple of options for how large and open you want the rose to look. I personally like to have the roses be more open and less tightly wound, so I will actually completely let go of the flower here to let it roll out a bit. Now I'm going to add hot glue all over the bottom of the flower. This will help keep all of the layers in place. Then I will carefully fold over the bottom piece and stick it down. Be careful here because the glue will be very hot. You can see that the small circle at the bottom does not cover the entire bottom of the flower. This is because I let the flower go completely so I could get a larger, more open rose. If I flip the flower over, you can see through the bottom, which is not what we want. So I'm going to just use some scissors and the scrap paper from this flower and cut a larger circle to glue to the base of the flower. Now when I flip it over, you can't see through the bottom of the rose. I also wanted to share that each rose took me about 4 to 5 minutes, so for the 16 roses, it was a little under an hour and a half to get them all made. I wanted to show you a rose that I kept wound really tight so you could see the difference. So for the rose on the right, I didn't let go of the flower completely before I glued the bottom. I held it pretty tight after it was wound and then applied glue and stuck the bottom on. Keep in mind, the rose on the right has some of the petals rolled so it looks more open around the edges. I haven't done that yet with the rose on the left. I much prefer the openness of the center of the rose on the left, but you can do whatever you prefer here. I'm going to roll some of the petals on the left flower really quick so you can see a better comparison. To do that, I will just take the quilling tool and slide it onto the very top of a petal, then roll it back slightly to create a curl. I will usually do 2 outer layers and then alternate some of the 3rd outside layer if I think it's needed. Okay, so now I'm going to show you this process a couple more times with the different color cardstock, just to make sure you can see exactly what I'm doing here. I'm going to speed the video up a bit here as well. So use the quilling tool to roll the flower. Then for a more open rose, let the flower go so it naturally unwinds a bit. Then add hot glue to the entire bottom of the flower and stick down the base. Again, since the flower is more open than the base was designed for, I'm going to manually cut a circle to cover the entire bottom of the flower so you can't see through it. Once the base is glued on, I will flip the flower over and start curling the outside petals to make it look more open. Okay, let me show you one last one really quick just for fun. Once all 16 roses have been made, you can start assembling the shadow box. First, we need to cover the back of the shadow box in some pretty paper. I'm going to use this pink glitter cardstock. So I will place the cardboard on the paper, trace it, and then cut it out. I'm going to use some Mod Podge and a foam brush to glue this paper on, but you can use whatever glue you prefer. I'm also going to use my brayer tool to make sure the paper is really stuck down. Once the Mod Podge is dry, we can start gluing on the paper flowers. You can see that the shadow box has an edge all around it to hold the back piece in place. You want to make sure when you're gluing down the flowers that you leave enough space around all of the edges to account for that. So I'm going to line up all of the flowers how I want them before I start gluing. Again, make sure you leave room around all of the edges. Now we can add some hot glue to the bottom of the flowers and stick them down. Make sure you are getting them really close together so you can fit them all in. Once all of the flowers are glued down, you can place the back of the shadow box back on. Then you can close the metal points and flip it over to see your pretty shadow box. Now we are ready to work on the design for the top of the shadow box. So go ahead and open up a new project in Cricut Design Space and upload your design. The design I'm using today is available on my website, which I will link below. Once the design is open, you will need to resize it to fit onto the shadow box that you are using. For this shadow box, I decided to go with 5 inches for my design. That's a little bit smaller for this shadow box than I would typically do, but I wanted to make sure that you could see all of the rose detail behind the design. Since we are just using one color of vinyl for this project, we can select the entire design and click Attach. This will keep everything together when we are cutting. Now you can click Make It and continue to select your material type. I'm going to select the vinyl material type and set my pressure to more pressure. Now I will place the adhesive vinyl on my standard grip mat with the colored side up and the paper backing side down. Then load the mat and start cutting. Once the machine is done cutting, unload the mat and remove the vinyl. Next, we are going to weed the design. Use a weeding tool to peel up the corner of the vinyl and remove all of the excess vinyl. Now we can use the weeding tool to remove all of the smaller pieces in the design. Before we add the vinyl to the shadow box, we want to go ahead and clean off the glass with some rubbing alcohol and a lint-free cloth. Next, we will cut a piece of standard grip transfer tape and place it onto the vinyl. Use a scraper tool on the front and back of the vinyl to get it stuck down really well. Now carefully peel up the transfer tape with the vinyl on it. Next, we can carefully place the vinyl and transfer tape onto the shadow box and use a scraper tool again to make sure the vinyl is stuck down well. Carefully lift up the transfer tape and you are all done. How pretty is this shadow box? I absolutely love how it turned out and can't wait to make more types of rolled flowers in the future. The whole process was pretty simple and it turned out beautiful. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and get a chance to make your own rolled flower shadow box with your Cricut. Don't forget to grab the design I used today on my website listed below. Be sure to subscribe so you can follow along each week as I share new crafty projects. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!